What's up and welcome back to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Of course, I am Tim Geddes. I'm joined by the new face of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Good day to you, Tim.
The Big Daddy himself, Greg Miller.
What?
And making his return for the very first time to this studio, it is Insomniac Senior Creative Director, Bryan Intihar.
Thanks, guys. I am pumped. I am psyched. I've been waiting for 5 years to come back, so I'm ready to do this. Let's go.
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so excited that not only did we have you for the Spoilercast for Spider-Man 1 that everyone should go check out. I feel like it's one of the most important pieces of content that Kinda Funny has ever made in terms of like the audience out there. Like it is one that many meet and greets we've been to, people have been like, I go back and listen to that. Like that's our entry point into even learning about Kinda Funny and stuff. So you're part of like the Kinda Funny lore, Bryan.
Well, that Spoilercast is really the first time we kind of talked about Spider-Man 2. Like, we talked about the black suit.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I think something like that needs its own game. So that was actually really the start.
And today will be the first time we're talking about Spider-Man 3, everybody. But we're going to get there later. Of course, we got to get into all of it. This is the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Each and every week, we get together to talk about video games and all the things that we love about them. You can get it on youtube.com/kindafunnygames or roosterteeth.com. You could also get it as a podcast by searching your favorite podcast service for Kinda Funny Gamescast, and we'll be right there for you. If you want to go above and beyond, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunny. Where you can get the show ad-free. You get a whole bunch of bonus content and more. You could be a Patreon producer like Jedi Master Deadpool and Delaney Twining. Thank you so much for your support. Today we're brought to you by BetterHelp, but I'll tell you about that later. A little bit of housekeeping. It's Spider-Man time, everybody. There's going to be a whole bunch of Spider-Man content that you can check out and Mario Wonder content that you can check out. We have reviews for both of those games. We're doing big, long streams for both of those games. You can watch them live on Twitch or youtube.com/kindafunnygames as a VOD. And we also have our first hour of Spider-Man 2 up. It is a really, really, really kick-ass edit that Roger did of me, Greg, Andy, and Janet's first authentic hour experience with the game, each individually edited into one video. You should definitely check that out after you guys all enjoy your first hour with Spider-Man 2. We're a weird little time loop here.
I was going to let you go.
Sorry.
This is going up in a week. No, all that's there. And especially for us, you're probably listening to this. We are well aware how many people listen to Kinda Funny rather than watch Kinda Funny. The hour-long video is just a video. We'd love it if you went to youtube.com/kindafunnygames and watched that. Of course, we've gone above and beyond for TikToks this time around, right? Talking about, of course, Shirtless Spider-Man, Shirtless Miles Morales being in there. Talking about, all the different suits. There's a bunch of content that is video only that you might not see. And we love making that. We'd love you to support it.
Absolutely. Okay, enough of that stuff. Let's talk about full spoilers for Spider-Man 2. Bryan, is this the first time, your first spoiler cast for Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, this is the first one. I woke up, I took a good night's sleep for the first time in like forever, so I'm ready to go. Let's talk about actual spoilers.
Let's start here. What do you want to talk about? This being your first time, you're able to talk about this game. What's the thing that's been hardest to not talk about?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, Greg made sure to tell me that I was throughout the whole campaign, we had to keep as many things secret as possible because I wanted him to be surprised, right? Well, I mean, obviously probably the biggest thing is who is Venom. That's the biggest one, right? And I mean, I thought it was going to be pretty obvious that based on the teaser of the first game, like who it would eventually be, but I guess we had kept people guessing, so it was good. So I
think the fact that you brought up the question made us question.
Yeah.
Right. To have Venom say, "Let's heal the world" or "heal the world."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, it's going to be," but then you were like, "Oh, it's somebody's never been it," and this, that, and the other. Oh, okay. Well,
but then I know there's a lot of Eddie Brock fans, and people like the story trailer. People like capturing things like from a fallen ceiling that had something that they thought referenced Eddie Brock, and I was like, that's not even close. It's not even close. So no, but I think, for us, it was really about how can we, Venom is such a popular character, right? And there's so many characteristics of the design and his abilities and his personality that people love. And so how can we give people what they hope and want from the character, but at the same time, how can we tell our own story? And we felt pretty strongly that making the host of that bonds with the symbiote someone closer to Peter and have more of an emotional thing would lead to a more unique, a unique story for us to tell. So we weren't just kind of telling the same story that you've seen in the comics.
How difficult is it to navigate that? Like, do you listen to speculation? Because for us on PS I Love You, There've been plenty of times where we have talked about like,
Yes.
right, is it Harry? Is it not Harry? I've even brought up like the idea of like, oh yeah, I think he might play as Venom. And even when I got there,
That's the biggest spoilers. The biggest thing is like playing as Venom, which but
I got there and I was like, let's fucking go. Like I expected it, but I didn't really expect it.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I mean, I do either listen or someone will send me, or someone will, especially like you guys,
James.
someone will send me a clip. Actually, it's Tree and Lauren, two Insomniacs I work with. They like to send me everything. You met Lauren. She's one of the writers on the game.
Lauren.
They like to send me what people are saying, especially you guys. And it is hard. It's really hard because like with something like Marvel, there is just an inherent expectation of I want that comfort food, right? I want to have Venom do this, or Peter to do that, or Sandman to do this. But then at the same time, well, I don't want to do the exact same thing I've seen or read or watched in a movie. So there's that constant back and forth. Like throughout the entire development, we are doing that all the time. Like how far can we push it? How far can we not? I mean, and that started from the first game. We're like, are we going to kill Aunt May? Like, yeah, okay. And then the Miles game, completely reinventing the Tinkerer. And then obviously with this game and, even like how we approach Kraven and those things. And then having like our lizard kind of start out in the form of like the traditional lizard and then kind of going more of like a larger, like he's actually really inspired by the Shed comic where he looks a little bit more reptilian and larger. It wasn't just because we wanted to make him larger. It was like actually it was inspired by that design. So, but yeah, it's storylines, character designs, twists and turns, like gameplay features in terms of what can we do with the symbiote. So yeah, we're constantly going back. It's nerve-wracking.
Is there a balance between telling something original but versus not pissing off a fan base? Because we've gotten so many Marvel adaptations now, especially with the MCU, where people have an expectation of what they're going to get out of a particular story. And so now that, you get to do Venom, you get to do Lizard, you get to do, like, Norman Osborn is in here, right? Like, there are so many established elements of a Spider-Man. Is there things where it's, we want to take it this far, but there's an expectation here. We got to align ourselves with what Spider-Man is?
Yeah, I mean, God, it's such a great question because I'm just, like, sitting here thinking in my head, like, all those... Because... there will be people who are like, and I get it. It's a passionate fan base. It's passionate people. That's why that's why I, as a little kid was wearing 8 Underoos shirts at once because I didn't know what superhero I wanted to be that day. Like, it's finding that balance. And for some people, like I read it, it's got to be like this. And no matter what, I'm not going to be happy, which I understand. But at the same time, I feel like our job as storytellers is to find those opportunities. And for some, they'll feel like we went too far. Some will say we didn't go far enough. And some, hopefully we hit that sweet spot. So it's really, really hard. I think we just, obviously Spider-Man 1 gave us confidence of like, hey, we're kind of finding that sweet spot. And then I think we end up taking more risks along the way. But I guess it's up to that person to see if we kind of met it. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I thought you walked the line great. I thought you hit that sweet spot. That was the big thing. You joke around about like, last time in 2018 on the review.
God,
it was kind of, a Spider-Man story, which I wish Doc didn't go bad, but I didn't.
That was the point though. I wanted you not want him to go bad. I actually wanted you to think they're making him so likable that we don't want him to turn bad.
And I've talked about it on the show since then, and I've retracted a bit where I'm like, I still feel that way, but I might have been, it was an unfair, like, blanket statement, not giving credit for Aunt May's death and all these other things. Not just because you hound me all the time about it. But Spider-Man 2 was, I think you did it really well we talked about this on the show, right? And I think me and Blessing had an in-person conversation where when I was, after night 1, maybe night 2, I was like, yeah, it's more Spider-Man, which is great, but and then it was when we really get going. Once Peter got the symbiote, and I really feel we got to the demo you released. That was where, like, when the demo got released in the PlayStation State of Play, or was it the showcase? I forget.
I don't remember.
In the PlayStation presentation.
Yeah.
It was watching it and Peter doing going off, and he's always like that. And not having played the hours up till that point, it was like, oh, well, I've seen this before. I know what's about to happen.
I'm not going to lie. I sat here when I watched you guys' impressions of that, I'm like, really, guys? Like, come on. Like, give me a chance. Like, it's going to be good. You're
Of
gonna
course,
like it.
we always expect, but we've been burned. Not by you, but other people.
I know.
Ted Price. No.
Oh, wow.
No, Ted's never burned me. But it was then going over that hump and seeing where you were taking
Yeah.
it and living through it and going with it, and then getting actually drawn into Pete and Harry in a different level, right? And really seeing their friendship, seeing Pete, struggle with the current being Spider-Man right now, and he always is balancing that. But you saw the chip damage that.
Yeah, you know what? You mentioned something about it getting going, and I think anybody who releases the game can sit here and go, here's the 50 things we would have done differently or we want to improve. And I think looking back, just in terms of the pacing, like Act 1 is pretty big, like that before he gets the suit, it's kind of really chunky, and it's because I think it's just a thing of like, well, we gotta get people caught up on the story, the characters, the relationships, make sure you care about Pete and Harry. That takes time, right? It gets going, but I think for some people that could feel like, oh, hey, I just want to get going a little bit. So I think that's something we'll continue to look at as game makers, like how can we get the pacing to be as best as possible.
But again, I think it pays off.
Yeah,
because when Pete really starts to go and we really see Venom, and again, like, the classic narration of the comic, right? But if we could peel back the suit, you'd see Peter sleeping. When it was happening in the game, I was like, oh, I know it's happening, but how are they going to show it?
Yeah.
And the way you show it and the fear and the horror part of it, then to get out. And like, again, I mentioned this in a vague way, I think on the review or the FAQ, but like when fucking Peter is down, right? Miles is squaring off against all the symbiotes, and then he kip ups and becomes anti-Venom. That was my let's fucking go.
Oh, yeah.
Are you
So
kidding
well,
me?
God, man, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so fucking psyched to be here to talk about this stuff. So one of the biggest debates was, so we're going to give Pete these symbiote powers, and people are going to be pissed when we take him away, right? And we were like, all right, we'll do anti-Venom. Like we'll give him back. And then it was a debate of like, how many missions can you go without having the symbiote powers?
Go back to these arms. You're like, all right.
Yeah, exactly. And we were like, and the idea was like, let's give the time between losing the symbiote and getting anti-Venom was just enough so people understood how difficult the symbiotes were going to be and how much now of a bigger threat Venom was. And then just when you had enough, we're going to give it back to you. That was I remember actually, because we worked on a lot of the game during, obviously most of it was during COVID. It was COVID at that point. I remember being in my old house and remember being on the Zoom call, and we were like, had the macro up and going, okay, so it's 2 missions. Should it be 3? Should we move things around? Like I remember actually having those conversations. I can picture it in my head. So yeah.
See, for me, that was like the payoff of it feeling like something different.
Good.
I'm somebody who like,
Yeah, what do you think about this game? 4 out of 5? No, I'm kidding.
But like, for me, a lot of it was, okay, like I know Venom, I know Sandman, like I've watched movies / played games that have told this story before. And so for me, it wasn't until Anti-Venom where I truly did not expect that. Because I'm not familiar with any of the Anti-Venom stuff in the comics or wherever else it showed up. And for me, as somebody who's like enjoyed and watched anime in the past, Anti-Venom felt like such a Super Saiyan, like, oh shit, when did this come up? Like, when did this form come through? Yeah. And then on, that's where I started to feel the, okay, yeah, this feels like it's veering off of what I typically see in a way that is making this stand out.
And that's, like you said, it's that balance of like, this is what people want or expect, this is what they don't expect, and where's that line, right? And, could it happen sooner? Like, I remember reading like ideas like, oh, Pete's going to get the symbiote within the first hour. And I'm like, no, because like I think we need to build that bond between Harry and Peter. So it's really awesome that you guys Anti-Venom resonated with you guys.
Oh, 100%. Once I did that, I was like, that's the suit. And then you guys gave me the classic black suit. And I was like, well, that's classic black.
Yeah.
I got to do that.
See, that's an example of like, you want that thing that you feel comfortable with. You want that comfort food. You want that thing you grew up with and loved. Like, and it's finding those opportunities to inject some of the other stuff.
If I can just toss in, I know I don't know where you're going, so I just want to do it. You're talking about like surprises and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, Anti-Venom's right there. Playing as Venom, it wasn't. But I think it like if you would have, as I hit the options button to start the game, I'm like, I'll probably end up doing some of it. Yeah. But I had forgotten about it long enough and gone through this giant battle that when I did get it, I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Running ruckshot over it. Scream, I didn't expect to see, right?
Cool.
Like,
and MJ a Scream,
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, even taking it to really getting into the meteorite, really getting into the other symbiotes. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't expect to bring that part of the comics in with the crazy, like when we got to the first spiral, I was like, oh, shit, okay.
They're going.
Did you guys expect Pete versus Miles?
I mean,
I predicted that a long time ago.
I think we thought Miles was gonna kill Pete at one point on PS I Love You.
A lot of people think Pete was going to die. A lot of people I've read people
very
thought
happy he didn't. And honestly, I feel like I'm happy Harry didn't die either. I know
we did. By the way,
You just killed every other villain in your universe.
We actually did. We talked about that. Was obviously something we talked about.
Yeah.
The other thing we talked a lot about is this is a story of two Spider-Men. Why does this story demand having two Spider-Men? And that was an example of Pete and Miles both working together to save the city, essentially save Harry, bring him back and stuff. So that was an example of something iteration over and over with the team and even external writers and working with them and making sure that the story just comes together. We're constantly iterating over and over and over again.
I'm so happy specifically with Harry not dying at the end because of Finn's death and how impactful that was in Miles Morales that I liked that we didn't like.
Oh yeah, I mean,
close to the emotional beats, but like we didn't need.
And
to,
I think there's definitely I think where a lot of us worried like, oh, is it going to feel too similar to the previous games and stuff like that? And I mean, obviously a character death is a big deal, right? And it has a sense of weight and emotion. I think our challenge was, can we get that sense of emotion without a death, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was, and I give a lot of credit to the actors because I think, actually, you know what's crazy? I couldn't even be there for that shoot. I had COVID. I got COVID and I was like devastated, but I was watching remotely and I remember like, I called all of them afterwards and I got on the way we can do it, you can like remote in and you can like be the voice of God. And I actually was just thanking everybody for such a great, because they just, Graham, who plays Harry, and Yuri obviously plays Peter. They just did such a great job. I was so proud of them.
Do you find that fans demand death sometimes? Because it's funny how both for this game and in our speculation for games like God of War, Ragnarok, for example, right? Like the conversation is always, oh, but when is Atreus going to kill Kratos? Or like, when is this character going to die? Or like, I feel like that's the conversation when it comes to the narrative beats of so many video games and big titles like this. Is that something that is purely like a fan desire, like we want our hearts to get ripped out, or like how does that then feed into how you guys look into writing these stories?
That's an excellent question. I haven't really thought of that before. I think there's just something. I mean, we're human beings, right? What's the worst thing is the loss of a loved one or loss of somebody we know. I think there's just something inherent about those feelings that come up, and it brings things up in us. I mean, even thinking about that kind of stuff. So I think it's a way for us to further connect to the characters, the world, the story, especially, in a game, like, a movie could be 2-3 hours long. You're spending, 10, 20, 30 hours, even, God, if you're playing Baldur's Gate, how long hours is that thing? So there's that. We want some type of connection. I don't think that's the only way to connect to it. And I think we're definitely trying. For me, actually, one of the most emotional moments of Spider-Man 2 is when Miles and Lee are talking, and Miles kind of saying like, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I have to move on." Right? To me, that's just that. Awesome. And but hey, that's all the writers. That's actually, speaking of Lauren wrote that scene, right? Like that is a moment where, to me, is such a great message and just as emotional that you get from a character death, or thinking about. When Pete and Harry are in Queens and going through and finally sitting on the bleachers and him basically saying, "Come on, let's be part of it." Or when they're in the EMF and he's like just talking about his mom and what this means to him and her and Aunt May. And like, to me, you can get that kind of emotion and it doesn't always have to lead to death. I just think, but yeah, that's a great question.
To your point, right? I think it's the investment in it. When we're on the outside, we have a concept art, maybe a teaser, and you're trying to predict what you would do. Yeah. It's easy to go for big strokes, right? This is going to be the big thing. But like the Martin Lee conversation you're talking about that Lauren wrote, right? Like for me, it's the one I was like, it's good when I stop to write down the quote. And I go back to Ragnarok, right? Where it's like, oh shit! Yeah. Fuck! What is grief?
Nope, that's WandaVision.
That's WandaVision, right? Yeah. But when it was about grief, I forget. I want to get a tattoo, but I keep forgetting to. But the other one is when Miles is talking to Lee, right? And he's like, "It's part of the job." He knows that, and he's like, "What?" And he's believing in second chances. And it's like, what a great way to boil down the concept of what makes Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a hero.
I'm very fortunate not only to do the job I have, but to be like hang out with you guys today, right? But to be able to work with an amazing team, and I actually spend a lot of time with the writers, and it was great on Spider-Man 2. We were able to have a much larger writing team, a lot of different perspectives and experiences. Some people who actually really didn't have a lot of experience writing games, but they brought a whole new voice to the project. And to see all of their imprints across the game and taking like story ideas that we had in early 2019 and just expanding them and making them bigger. That's what I know I'm really proud of, because like, I couldn't come up with half this shit. Like I couldn't do it, and it's just like, and the other thing is, I mean, you guys all know this is the ability to tell a story in a video game is getting so amazing. Like you talk about Ragnarok, like
to grieve is to have loved fully, by the way.
Yes.
That franchise is just, I mean, they're just crushing it, right? I mean, that's what you're competing against or with, and you're seeing that across the board, so many places, we have to elevate. And I'm just happy, whether it's the writers, the animators, the designers, them being able to take these ideas and own them and make them so much better. Like we could sit here for the next 3 hours and I could go through every single mission going, here's what we said at the beginning. Then these 5 to 10 people got involved and made it like 1,000 times better.
To me, the thing that's so special about Spider-Man as a property overall is the world of it, because it has such rich characters, the locations. There's so much that people know, and so much legacy with movies, games, TV shows, comics, everything in between. And it is playing with their expectations, fulfilling the expectations when it comes to what you want to know and all that. We're talking about what surprised us earlier, and like the anti-Venom moment being so exciting. To me, the exciting moment was the Sandman fight in the beginning. Like,
oh my God,
that set piece was so incredible. But
cool.
What I love about it is, to me, I feel like that was just such a great kind of thesis statement about what this game's going to be, which is set piece after set piece and these wild moments of the Spider-Man interacting with each other with characters that, of course, Sandman's going to be there. Why wouldn't he be? But we didn't know he was going to be. And I feel like the game constantly just rewards you with like these character moments. And for me, it was the Miles getting thrown by Sandman through the building.
That scene is incredible.
Slingshotting back. It was like, that is the let's fucking go moment. And that was 10 minutes in.
So we actually said Sandman really early. Like it was actually, I remember it was one of the first conversations we had, and I just walked in and said, I want the opening to be Sandman. I had no idea. I think I was probably riding high off, making Spider-Man 1. I was like, okay, and I obviously knew that we were going to be on PS5, and I was thinking a couple things. Like, one,
you've seen all this voxel technology they have. Let's use it.
I was like,
Cerny's out here talking about it.
So it's going to be Spider-Man 2. We know we're going to have 2 heroes. What's a threat from the very beginning that demands 2 heroes? Then it's like, we had, the Fisk in the first game, and then we had the kind of the Rhino chase. What's something that like scale wise is going to like go crazy? And then what's the third thing is like, what's going to like within the first 25 minutes, people go, PS5. And that's kind of the combination. I had no clue if we could do it. I had no clue how we could do it. And then, like 4.5 years later, it finally happened. So yeah, there's a lot of the game definitely, something I joke about with the Marvel guys is we're like, how can we make it more Marvel? And like to us, that's kind of like make the epicness crazy. And there's a lot of big moments throughout the main campaign. You can talk about, the boat sequence. You can talk about Coney Island. You can talk about playing as Venom. You can talk about, the final mission, like it's basically like an hour long. I mean, it's crazy. So I think for us was balancing those like big, epic, holy God, this is like, in a way, you guys probably know us, I'm a big Uncharted fan. It was like, how can we bring that level of scale and epicness to an open world in a way? But at the same time, how do we have those slower, outside the suit human moments like Queens? Like I was adamant, like I want that Queens mission. I want that going back. I want to go Midtown High. I want to see riding the bike.
When we pulled out on the bike, I was like, oh, that's cool.
So, I was like, I can guarantee you Greg's not thinking he's going to ride a bike in this game. Like, I can guarantee that, right? There's no way.
I love the Ultimate Spider-Man like haircut. With
Yeah. And I mean, you've just seen like, making them look younger, and then like Yuri like changing his voice to sound younger, right? I was like, if we can nail that Queen's mission, it's going to make you care about Pete and Harry for the rest of the game.
100%.
And I was
exactly
like, and we just went back and forth, and that team worked. Because that's the other thing is like, we spend so much time in missions and features that like where they're in the suit, right? And you're doing Spider-Man thing. There's very little outside of one part in the gym. You're not really doing a lot of Spider-Man stuff at all. So you have to create a whole mission around that. So all your unique stuff and kind of borrowing and finding things and then doing. You're in present day, you're in past, present, back, and all that kind of stuff. And, and that's an example of like all the loading we can do with the PS5 and stuff. So, but that was really important to me. Like as much as time we spend in all of these big, oh my God, this is like playing an MCU set piece. It's just important to have those slower moments.
So speaking on villains, right? Like you talk about Sandman, but like for the main villains, we're talking about Venom and we're talking about Kraven, right? And like, you throw Lizard in there as well. How do you guys go about choosing the overall villains? Because like from the outside looking in, it feels like you guys are kind of going through a best of. Like, okay, who are the best Spider-Man villains? Let's just throw them in there. Because you look at the first game, it's Doc Ock, right? You look at this game, it's Venom. Yeah. And it seems like you guys
are up for the third.
Yeah, like Green Goblin possibly. Who knows? But
there's one we have not featured yet. I'll tell you, the process starts just like you would imagine. We're all fans of Spider-Man and Marvel. Which characters do we like? Like, just like fanboy out, completely go. Like, Doc Ock is my favorite Spider-Man villain. That's why he's the first game. 100% that's why. I'm not going to, being the creative director gives you sometimes the ability, we're doing it. We're doing Doc Ock, right? And I just love the idea of like the father figure, that kind of thing, right?
You knew.
What's that?
You knew.
And yeah, that's right. You knew. That's right.
Throughout video game
that's
time.
right. That's right. It's funny. Sometimes when I see that, I'm like, wait, we had him say it twice, and I'm like, yeah, we did. So it starts with that. And then we're like, okay, what story do we want to tell? What's going to allow us to talk about that? And we knew, obviously we knew we were going to do Venom, right? Because we set it up, but like, what are other characters that kind of help us tell the story of Pete and Miles that we want? So obviously we knew that in many ways, Pete and Miles are kind of dealing with their past a little bit, right? How can they, in order to move forward, they have to come to terms with the past. Pete has to come to terms with May no longer being here. Miles has to come to terms with, if he's going to write that college essay and be able to write it, he needs to be able to put the past of Lee behind, not forget his dad or even maybe forgive Lee, but he has to move on from it, right? And Rio says that to him in that one scene. And then I think for us, we also looked at, if you look at both Spider-Man 1 and Miles, a lot of those enemies are tech-based, like they use tech. And we were like, hey, for Spider-Man 2, since we knew we were going to do Venom, do we want more of that science gone wrong monster kind of feel? And that was what I do. Now, Kraven's obviously not a monster. He's completely different. He hunts them. So we're like, oh, great, we're going to have like more monsters. You want somebody who would be like interested in the hunt of, of like, what's the, the deadly, it's like that kind of thing. So it's like kind of starts with a fanboy, starts with the story, goes to the story, and then kind of like thematically, how can we make this game feel different from the previous games?
We always talk about the moments that we'll never forget from movies or games or stuff that will be talked about for years to come. And Spider-Man Homecoming had a moment that every time we watch it blows our minds. And that is Pete opening the door and the Vulture is actually the dad.
That's
right?
Such a great
and
scene.
the theater gasped because we didn't see it coming. Spider-Man 2, I think, has one of those moments. It's a little more subtle in how it's presented. But the moment you realize that Kraven's been killing the Sinister Six, that is the thing that all of us were like, are you kidding me? That is so cool. And I think raised the stakes and was such a creative choice that playing through and like it feels semi-optional. I don't know if it is. There might be parts that like you have to see, but walking around and finding out all the documents and seeing the different like pieces of the armor and stuff, it's like, this is a wild take on Kraven, and it just adds up and makes so much sense, him being the hunter.
When he gets Scorpion, right, and brings down, I'm like, oh, what are they gonna do? Well, he's not dead. Oh, he's dead.
No, he's really dead.
It's hearing you guys talk. It's funny because I think back to like conversations I had like 3 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have him hunt. Like I kind of forgot that that's the thing. He hunts them. I know I've played this game 1,000 times. Like I'm like, oh yeah, we had that decision. Like that's gonna be the twist. Is like they think he's recruiting them to help him do whatever he wants. No, he's actually gonna kill them.
So cool.
Does Marvel Games? Does Bill Roseman be like, nah, we're not kidding?
No, those. I mean, I love Bill. I love Eric. I love all those guys.
By the way,
they're
good Easter egg for Eric.
Yeah,
you're walking in and then you listen to a baseball game. It's like Eric Monticelli.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. Well, we gave Bill the shout out and Roseman. We had to give one to Eric. Kraven is a really hard character to get right. He is. I mean, we went through a lot of different. I mean, at one point, I think he was going to be a businessman, which we don't going to do that. It was like we're like, how can you have a version of him that's like kind of normal, and then he becomes, and we were like, you know what? Just get him in that outfit, man. Let's have him. Let's do it. Let's just do it.
Getting out there and wanted to like pump up all these villains, be like, I want you at your best form, Lizard. It's like, come on, that's just sick.
And you know what? And the thing about Kraven is, we realized after a while less was more. In terms of the more that he spells everything out, it's almost like kind of going behind the curtain. And like we want him to be mysterious. We want him to be like, what is going through his head? And that's kind of once we kind of hit that, the character took off. But Jim Pierre, who plays Kraven, that was a hard character to cast. But I'll tell you a really funny story about. I'll tell this casting story. So we're trying to figure out who is Kraven, but also like, what does he sound like? And I remember at one point during auditions, I happened to say, well, like he should sound like. In the original John Wick movie, he should sound like the father in John Wick. And Jim, I guess, was off the side and heard me say that. So when he had the call back, he had watched that to get the right voice. And then when he came in for the callback, he was actually testing with Yuri. And it was a scene where he's in the cage. We had a version of that scene, and Jim just fucking crushes it. And I actually cast him the day before we got shut down for COVID. And by the end, Jim was telling us how Kraven should be.
Awesome.
That's what you want, right?
Like one of the like, you know, we shoot out of order, right? It was one of the ones where it was Kraven he was coming over and where they tell him the Sandman eluded us, and he's like, I guess he's not the one. Jim is telling us how he should be sitting and how he should be positioned, and him playing with the knife. That's all Jim.
Hell yeah.
And I'm just like, that's when I'm like, the actors they're the ones who take the story that we have and the characters and the motivations and stuff and put it over top. And there's one other story I want to tell. One of my favorite scenes is the scene where we hear We Are Venom for the first time, where they're at the dinner table and Harry is trying to tell Pete, like, this is your last chance. You're going to come with me. So Graham, who plays Harry, he's doing the whole thing. And we're sitting there, we're doing a couple takes, and then all of a sudden, it was me, Bobby Connington, our animation director, and Ben, one of our narrative directors. We're all like talking about what notes we're going to give. And Graham just goes, guys, I got it. We didn't say anything to him. He's like, I got it. And he just drops, just crushes the scene. And at that point, when the actors just kind of like really understand their character and just take it to a whole nother level, like, it's great. I remember one of the first days Graham and Yuri were on the bikes on the set, and then you have you do those scenes. So by the time you get to like that, like We Are Venom moment, it just is.
They have the connection too, right? They've built that conversation.
Yeah, and and that's the thing. Like, I know you've talked to a lot of teams, a lot of directors. Like, especially in the Sony side, there's definitely a bond between the team and the cast.
Sure.
And I think that what's like I had brunch with Yuri a couple weeks ago. So we live right, just as friends, right? And I think their ability to take the characters in the story and elevate it is really what makes this stuff like really special. The days being on set are some of my favorite by far.
Greg?
Sorry, I'm just going to keep talking. You guys got
Well, that's kind of how the Spoilercast is supposed to work. They've heard us talk about the game already.
All right.
Yeah,
what do you
exactly. I want to get to you in just a sec, but real quick, I want to take a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? I can't even count the amount of nights I lose sleep just because I can't stop thinking and my brain just won't stop talking. It turns out one great way to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk through them. Therapy gives you a great place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. And it can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Some of my best friends use BetterHelp and love how helpful it can be for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. You can make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/kindafunny. BetterHelp.com/kindafunny.
We went around with it earlier, but we're back to it. So I think it's a good point to jump in with. Again, you're talking about this being a team effort, right? Both the writers, the performers, the animators, and everything else.
Yeah.
I wanted to call it the 3 emotional moments for me that are also, I think, smaller ones that aren't the big ones, but
Good.
either your writers, your animators, your
It's probably
actors.
that's the one thing about doing these things. I feel like if I name somebody, I'm forgetting like 20. So
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, Insomniac.
So at the end, you know what I mean? Like, still playing through video games like this is an interesting thing for me still, because of course I'm a father now, right? So
Yeah.
that's changed since last Spider-Man. And I think to Ragnarok, right? And I think of the beginning of Ragnarok, you know, this being a weird bookend for my life, the beginning of Ragnarok, the death of Fenrir, right? Hitting me because of Portillo.
Yeah.
And then the end when Kratos is talking to Atreus in the tent, right? And is like starting to get choked up, and how that killed me thinking about Ben, right? The end of Spider-Man 2 here, there's, I think, an incredibly understated moment of when Harry's in the bed, MJ and Peter are in the room, and Norman goes over there and touches his face, and then the bubbling rage, and then the breath.
Yeah.
Like, not even before you get to the rage or anything, just him touching his face broke me, of like thinking about my son in that same position. And then again, what you would do as a father, then to see
Yeah.
that play out in the Doc Ock post-credit scene, I was like, oh, fuck. Like,
Mark Rolston, baby.
yeah, right?
God damn, he's good.
Yeah, and so like there, and that's what he's playing, I would assume, on the mocap stage, right? There's
Yeah.
just this little thing
Yeah.
he's doing that.
That
crushes.
when you work with someone like Mark Rolston, who's that talented, you just let them go.
Yeah,
You just go, Mark, here's the scene, make it better.
and then for me, the other tiny ones, right, that I never in a million years would have thought about, and coming into them would be the Howard side mission, and then
yeah.
the Grandpa side mission.
Okay, do you know how the Howard mission? I'm gonna tell you the story how the Howard mission happened. So,
Dave Fennoy wanted too much money to keep coming back, and you're like, we're gonna kill you.
so one of our designers, Brian Matheson, who actually he's the designer of the Sandman mission. He is one of the most creative designers I have ever worked with, and we at the end of one year we did we just let the guys, the whole team, just like a game jam, like just go make something fun. And he made the Howard mission in like 3 days, like prototyped it in 3 days. And he put some music in there, and it's like, it's not a lot of gameplay, right? But it's got with the music and everything. And then we're like, cut, paste, put it in the game. Like we're gonna do. That was never planned. Brian just had a creative idea one day and put it in the game. And that happens all the time. But like that Howard mission's amazing.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the grandpa mission, right? Of trying to find this woman's grandpa. You're like, okay, no big deal. And then it was like, as that starts to go and you sit down on the bench. And again, like the essence of what is Spider-Man, what separates Spider-Man from Superman, from Batman, from any other Marvel guy who's not, you know what I mean? Like, what is this guy? And that's who that guy is.
You know what? It's actually not a scene, but it is the VO, the VO that plays between Pete and Miles during the Pete and Miles fight. And hearing Pete say, now I'm the problem, and hearing like he's at his like we're about to lose Peter, like we're about to lose him, and seeing Miles pull him back.
Yeah,
to me, that's one of the. It's not a scene, but that VO back and forth really gets me every time.
Again,
I hear
performances, right?
it. Oh
Yeah,
God, Najee crushes it.
So good.
I want to jump off this because I feel like the Insomniac Spider-Man series is very uniquely positioned in that it is now, I think, in the pantheon of like greatest Spider-Man universes that are out there, and like it's up there. People have their favorite movies, favorite shows, favorite comics, whatever. But I feel like this is, in terms of quality, in terms of expectations, in terms of amount of characters and things that we've seen, there's now an understanding of what the Doc Ock in this universe is and the Venom in this universe is and the background and story. And
The white spider.
Exactly.
That can pop up in a movie
Yes.
and everybody flips out.
Oh, it's Insomniac. It's Marvel Spider-Man. Yes. And I feel like there's so much identity there. But
Do you still hate that suit?
Yeah, I'd have been immediately.
okay,
Here's
there
the
we
thing, no, and I'm sorry.
Go for it.
But like,
By the way, everybody, I want you to know, I love these guys. I'm just giving them crap.
no.
Okay.
You would not be here otherwise.
Okay.
No, I love the suit when I see it in Spider-Verse, when I see it in a comic book, when I read the game. But when I'm playing for some reason, I'm just like, nah, this ain't it.
Okay.
I'm reading back into classics.
I still love you.
For the record, I like the suit.
Thank you.
I hate the
He
hates the game.
The Peter sucks.
That's right. There we go.
I hate the man.
Perfect.
No, but I love that the identity of it all, and I feel like it has so much identity, so many choices that are uniquely Insomniac. But I think what is extra special that I'm seeing as a very big Spider-Man fan, somebody that's read so many of like the Miles comics, I'd say the majority of them at this point.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the world get introduced to Miles Morales via Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah.
Like that is now kind of the canon version of Miles to the mainstream and the public. And I feel like you guys immediately following that up with the Miles game reinforced it and like added to the own stamp there. What I think is so special about Spider-Man 2 is this is the first time really that we're seeing the Spider-Men together in a way that's dealing with many storylines, many villains, many previous lore and all that stuff, because there was the Spider-Men comic series, like 2 6-issue runs or whatever, crossover events that we get, multiverse stuff, whatever, into the Spider-Verse, we get Peter B. Parker. This is Peter Parker and Miles Morales as contemporaries.
Yes.
And I feel like that must be so much pressure for you guys, but also so much fun to be able to kind of define what does that relationship look like for a Miles that's facing a Peter that's just dealing with the symbiote.
Yeah, I will say that obviously when we had Miles in the first game, right? You could, when we got the spider bite, we knew, hey, he's gonna become a spider hero, and we're gonna hopefully, if the game is good, we'll do one where they can be together, right? That being said, telling a story with not one but 2 main heroes is really effing tough. Like it is a challenge because like you're telling a story, a main story that is like, okay, them together, right? But then you want to make sure that they have their own individual journeys, right? So, and then being able to interweave those and then thinking just about not just the story, but hey, in this mission, you play as Pete, but the next one we're going to play as Miles. How do we transition there? Or in this mission, they're together, but the next one they're apart. So how do we get Miles out of the scene or Peter out of the thing so now we can just play? So there's a lot of like, there's multiple times where I know I said to myself, I go, why did I say we should do 2 heroes? Why? And then, but you ask yourself that, and then you realize you're asking yourself because it's the tough thing to do. It's the right thing to do. But I will tell you, the thing I think I'm probably most proud of the game is that the relationship, the story of them together, and how, in a way, they're contemporaries, but you can tell kind of Pete still kind of right now, like he's definitely there for Miles in the beginning, but by the end, it's Miles kind of saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I don't know if you guys caught this when the second to last mission where they show up, Pete's in the anti-venom and Miles has his new suit, and Miles is telling Pete about what his dad and what May would say, and then at one point Pete goes, "What's the play, coach?"
Oh yeah,
that's what Miles says to Pete near the end of Spider-Man 1. So they flip.
Oh,
they flip. They flip. Now Miles is the one kind of saying, he's kind of not handing the baton, but saying, "Hey, it's I'm going to listen to you now." And that to me is like something. And then I think that eventually leads to that conversation they have at the very end, like, "Hey, go beat Pete for a while. I got this."
And for me, that was the thing, right? I didn't catch the fact that it was the crossover with 1, but for me, it was the baton pass where I knew we were getting to the garage. We got to the garage.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to bring up, talking about, emotionally resonant moments in the game, one that really hit for me is all the Hailey stuff. Culminating in doing the mission where you're playing as Hailey and you get that experience. But even building up to that and around that, right? Like Hailey's relationship with both Miles and Genki and Rio and everybody, like being able to do the sign language and be able to communicate with her and have it be a thing that feels like it's authentically done and very well realized. Like, what was all that like for you guys? Talking about, bring up the power of the PS5. One of the things that kept coming into mind for me as that stuff was happening was like, you wouldn't be able to do this on the PS2, on the PS3, I don't think, right? Like, this is something that you're able to do because of how far games have come.
Yeah. I will tell you, so when we sent the review code out, I was like, I wanted, there was a part where I wanted to write a note going, please play the Hailey mission. Just please play that. Cause I am really, really proud. Again, that's an example of like, there was not, at the beginning of development, there was no Hailey mission. There was no Hailey playable. Like, that's all extra work that the team was like, we feel really passionate about this. We want to do it. And they just did it. Like, they just went ahead and did it. And the fact that, like, you know, making sure that the soundscape reflected how she would experience it, right? And just and the Miles Hailey relationship, how it, you know, and, you know, I think for us is about, you know, for us, it's not just about showing the world from Pete and Miles's perspective. It's showing it from all of our characters' perspectives. That's why MJ is there. That's why we show MJ in the middle of things. That's why it was important to the team to show Hailey and be authentic and be respectful of that relationship. And, you know, I remember at one point the Hailey mission is actually one of the last things I ever reviewed, because in terms of like, I'm at the studio with the audio team reviewing, like, is it all working the way it is? And I even work with the designers. Originally we had text that said, like, there was sometimes we were worried, like, hey, if the audio obviously drops out, like, we don't have as much audio to reflect how she would be hearing, taking in the world. We actually had a note, and one of the designers, Josue, said, our design director goes, no, let's remove it. Let's just have people experience it like her. You talk about the identity of the franchise, and to me, having moments like that is, to me, what takes it to another level.
That was the thing for me. You mentioned, you know, Greg Miller would never expect to like ride a bike in this game. For me, I would have never expected a mission like that in the Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think like, even just like the little emojis that happen, like, that's all the team just coming up, dreaming up this stuff, and like being so, like, they love, I mean, every single person on the team loves Hailey. Every single person, and they just wanted to do it, and they're willing to put the extra time and effort. Because, I mean, you know, obviously things like Sandman and Venom and all that stuff, like, that's like the thing, but like the amount of time and attention and care and love that go into those moments, like, that makes me feel really good to work at a place that cares that much about the entire experience, and making sure when we do those moments, we're not just doing it to surprise, we're doing it to be out of respect and the right thing to do.
Yeah. For me, it was the fact that it wasn't just a scene, right? It wasn't just a scene or a specific like 5-minute sequence in the game. It's the fact that when you're playing as Miles and Hailey calls you, she has the text to speech, you have the full mission. You have so many scenes where Hailey is in there and people are paying attention and like communicating with her.
And that Miles. That was another powerful moment,
and that's the thing about, and that's the team doing the homework and going out and finding out, how do we make sure we do this the right way? How do we have the right consultants to go, hey, you know, we are doing this. Like, we're having like consultants on set when we're doing a scene between Hailey and Miles, make sure that we're doing it right. Because, you know, I'm always scared. I'm like, am I going to offend somebody? Am I doing this? Are we doing something wrong? The last thing I would ever want to do is to try to do something great and then it offends somebody. So it's just, I'm glad that, I hope that the whole world, when they play it, appreciates it and enjoys it. Because it does, like, kind of, it makes the world, even though I know it's a fake world, it makes it feel more real to me. And that's why I'm really happy that we can do that. And I'm really happy that you enjoyed it, you played it, you experienced it, because that, you know, all those, you know, one thing, you know, you bring up a point about like the extra content. One of the things we really focused on was, you know, we understand the main story is something that's the first thing people really talk about, right? But how can we inject, even if it's a small story, into some of that optional content, like whether it's the Howard or the grandpa or the kids at Brooklyn Visions or the Hailey, and then even like something like that is a little bit more like challenging, like or like a collectible, like a Sandman. Hey, there's a narrative that builds as we go. That's something we were adamant. Like I can still see the PowerPoint that I have is like, Marvel people love story. everything has to have a story.
Beautiful.
And that's what
I was wondering about this, of what not changed, because 2018 had great side stuff too. But this side stuff, everything matters. Whether it's Wraith, whether it's Carnage, whether it's Spider Bots,
Mysterio.
Yeah. And I think I can tell you that was a huge focus. And I know, like, some people say it's never enough of the optional stuff, right? I get it. I mean, for us, it's like, hey, we're going to make as much as we can at the highest quality we can, and we can't make it high quality, we're going to stop. Like, that's like, when people are like, how long is the game? And I'm like, it's going to be as long as the content is we feel is at our quality level, right? But it was really, really important. Like there's narrative payoffs or narrative setups or a mystery that you're trying to figure out along the way. So I love that you guys dove into it.
I want to comment on my favorite one because I think for me the favorite group of side activities would have been the flame stuff.
Yeah,
for me it came out of nowhere, and it's also like me as a Arrowverse fan, like I don't know much about Wraith in the comics.
Yeah,
and so like getting there, I'm like, you are so Arrow coded in a way that I appreciate because like. I played City That Never Sleeps, the DLC, and like I forgot the whole Yuri storyline. So when we get there, I'm like, what happened to you? But then as we go, the fact that like the villains in that activity are kind of raw, and they're these cultists, and it's really cool. And then you get to the end, and that reveal for me, I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on here?
And so it's not surprising because it's definitely probably of the optional stuff the biggest like it. I mean, it kind of feels like main content, right? It's just how many can you do of those and keep the quality level high? So it's like, I would rather do less but make it better than just have a ton of stuff and not do it right. So and it's funny. Well, so Tara Platt plays Yuri, who is Yuri Lowenthal's wife in real life. So to see them kind of battle and stuff, we knew we were always going to do Wraith at some point, and it's like, get ready. You're gonna battle.
That's something that I love about this is Wraith. Like we're getting so into the Duffy of these Spider-Man characters, and going back to the identity of the Insomniac verse of all these. Like I feel like Martin Lee, Mr. Negative, was another one that was kind of put into the mainstream because of 2018 and Tinkerer getting the redesign and all, or not redesign. But
it's a reboot, reimagine
was awesome, and even Prowler to some extent, all of that. But
I love Prowler.
I loved just the sheer amount of the villains in this game, amount that are teased and hinted at. But Greg and I were talking about the City That Never Sleeps DLC and how we love that you guys are just committing to that stuff happened. The lore's there. We're going to reference it. Characters that changed in those, like Black Cat included, are going to be. That happened, and we're going to address that in Spider-Man 2 in a way that you didn't need to play it. You kind of contextually understand it all, but
I mean, you guys. I mean, we've talked about this. You guys know I love the MCU. Like I'm a big fan of it, right? Well, I'm just taking homages to that from them in terms of like let's find those little things that we can reference and throw them in there for the people who do like for example, this on Tuesday night, was it Tuesday or Wednesday, was like the anniversary of Tony Stark dying in Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Well, like I was watching it that night, and I got a really funny story. I want to tell you guys about that. But that movie hits harder for the people who know all the movies, right? Who've been there and know all those things, right? But like if you just like kind of remember, it's still really great. But I will tell you a really funny story. So I'm watching it. This is total aside, and I apologize, but I got to say it because I want to show it to her. So my wife comes home from work, and I'm watching it. And at the very end, we get to the part where Steve Rogers is handing the shield, and all of a sudden, we're talking about how old Cap is. And we had the 15-minute debate about how old Cap was at that moment and how much the super soldier serum affected him. And I just said, I've never loved you more in my life. But I just an aside. But it is, I want to go back to something you said about Mr. Negative and Wraith. I think one of the philosophies we've kind of had, either by mistake or I'll say I did it on purpose but to sound smarter, give people stuff they want so you can inject things that maybe they aren't familiar with or maybe they don't know they want, but make them like that stuff. So like, I knew Doc Ock was coming. I knew Sinister Six would be there. I knew that would get I would hope that would get Marvel staying excited to give you a chance to go, hey, I'm going to give this Mr. Negative guy a chance, like someone who's not as maybe well known or hasn't been a part of the comics as long. So I think that kind of gives us some of that ability to try and different things.
I want to stick on the City That Never Sleeps for a second, because we talk on our different shows, Games Daily, PS I Love You, Gamescast, all of this, all the time about theorizing what's next, what's happening, PlayStation Studios as a whole, how they handle things. And a question I've always had is, Spider-Man 2018 having the 3-part City That Never Sleeps DLC come out, and then having Miles Morales come out that is this kind of, how would you define Miles Morales?
Do you want, truthfully?
Yeah.
That's Spider-Man 2.
Interesting.
That's in my head. That's Spider-Man 2. Like in a way, I told Brian Horton that when he was developing. I'm like, we can call it Spider-Man Miles Morales, but to me, that's Spider-Man 2 because I listen. We can get a debate about game length. I don't really give a shit about the game length. It's a great effing game.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah, blessing.
It's awesome. It's great.
Pretty good.
And it's funny. I got to work on it just a little bit at one point because when they're finishing up, anything I could do to help. But like that's all of them. Those guys, that team just crushed it. They did such a good job. But to me, in many ways, that's like to me, it's an essential. I hope people play that game. I hope they don't get wrapped into like, I know it's X hours long or whatever. That's a great game.
So that's
Sorry,
kind
I
of
just like advertisement. Please buy.
No. Like, but we love that.
Yeah.
We love those smaller games. We love Uncharted: Lost Legacy. We love Miles Morales. We want to see more of that stuff. And that's the thing is to me is like. In the levels of how PlayStation or whoever looks at it as, is this a success or not? Like, I would hope that we see more things like that and less things like City That Never Sleeps. But do you guys see City That Never Sleeps as a success?
I do. I mean, I think I do. I mean, I'm not going to get here and get into sales figures and all that stuff, but like, I think it extended the story, extended the world. Like, I think sometimes things like the City Never Sleeps, like it's just like, what are the expectations you're going in? If you're expecting like, oh, it's going to be like, that's unfair. I guess if you're buying it, you should have high expectations. I get that. It's just, if you go, hey, that's the next, another story that I can experience, great. If you're like, this has to be 20 hours long, exactly what the Spider-Man 1, well, you're going to be disappointed. So, listen, I would love to make more games like Miles. Like, I think I would love to do more stuff like that. If it works out for whether it's not just like, does it work for Sony? Does it work for us in terms of what else we're making? Because like, I can tell you, we worked just as hard as Miles Morales as we did Spider-Man 2 and worked on Ratchet. Like, the amount of effort goes in there. It doesn't matter if it's 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever. Blood, sweat, and tears are going into that experience, right? So I think it's about, first of all, are people want it? Do people want to pay for it? And then also, like, does it fit in terms of like everything else our studio, or if another studio is going through that same thing?
How much are you thinking about the future as you're creating new narratives, new things that are happening in a Spider-Man 2, for example? Because there are so many threads that I can't wait to see where we go from here. And for example, like Carnage.
Would you love to make a DLC for this one? You're gonna
Yeah,
make a
like, I mean, when
when
I take something like Carnage-
where's that new game plus at? We doing that? What's
The
that?
new game, it's coming. I promise you.
Yeah,
it's
like
coming.
Carnage
It's
versus
coming.
is it Cindy, the character?
Cindy.
Versus Cindy versus
Come on,
what's
guys.
teased with North.
Are we gonna eventually talk about that?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Start right here. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
that's what-
Well, he predicted it. You predicted Cindy.
Did I? Well, if I don't remember doing that, but if I did, I was probably doing a Tim Geddes point, which is don't do Gwen.
Yes, that's
do
what it was.
Cool,
That's what,
great,
and I was like,
makes sense.
oh shit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god. I was like, how does he know? Yeah, but we'll talk more about that later.
But the reason I know
Yeah.
is identity. I know that Insomniac doesn't want to just do the same thing that everybody has seen
Yeah,
before. It's
I
like
mean-
Cindy needs the spotlight.
All right, so Blessing, to your question, like, do we think of it all the way through? I will tell you I work remote. I work at home now. I don't go to the office anymore. I mean, I do once in a while, but not most of the time.
Yeah, not daily.
And I remember during Spider-Man 1, I would drive home and I'd think a lot about the future, like where everything, and I still do. I still have those moments where I'm driving and thinking about it. I'll tell you, there's like a roadmap where we want to go. It bends.
Mhm.
And I maybe think we're going left and we're going to, but right, but we're going to end up coming back to that same spot. So there are elements that we definitely know where we're going, but I'm never like, I said this 9 years ago, it's going to be like this no matter what. Though it's crazy sometimes where I'm like, wow, actually we did do what we talked about many years ago. But I try not to be, first of all, I don't have all the best ideas. And I think that, especially when, seeing people either be on the team for a while or new people come to the studio, they inject so many cooler ideas than we had originally thought. So it's like, hey, let's go. But, I'll put you this way. Seeing Otto at the end of this game, I knew that like 8 years ago.
So here's
That's
my
what I'm
question about that, because this is actually the first bullet point I ever put down. I did, and I know we're just going to talk, so I didn't need notes, but I want to it's more of a checklist to make sure I hit everything I wanted, so I don't drive home and freak out about it, right? So this is going to sound like I'm trying to pin you down. Obviously, I'm not. And we,
Okay.
this panel understands and the audience understands how video games are made. But when you guys started off for Spider-Man 2018, did you have in your head, like, this is what the entire thing is going to be? And then, again, I'm reading into what the villain says at the end, but what is that? The final chapter. Did you see this being a trilogy? And obviously, there's bends, things can change, things can go this, but like, from the onset, when you're pulled into a room and they say, "Do you want to make a Marvel game?" Is your idea, you know what? I want to do 3 games. I want to do this. I want to do this story. I want it to be a trilogy. I want it to be the Spider-Man.
I think I didn't say it had to be a trilogy. I think I said, like, okay, let's get the first one. But as you're really early on, you're like, well, if it is like we have multiple things,
Yeah.
here's where it could go.
Okay.
But that scene with Norman and Otto, I've had a version of that scene in my head. You can ask John Paquette. It's like the one thing I've like, John, remember this moment. Keep remembering this moment. We've got to get this moment. But that's the one I'm probably feel like I'm most proud of because it there's a version of that always been there. But yeah, there's a plan. There's a plan. It's changed. It's definitely changed. I mean, I can tell you right now, the word Cindy was never uttered 9 years ago, right? We try to have somewhat of a plan, but not be so rigid that it can't get better. That's the goal.
So then my question next would be,
Okay.
is your second favorite villain Green Goblin? Because I feel like there's a lot of parallels to, first off, obviously how much you love Doc Ock.
Yeah.
Then in our last spoiler cast, you said the symbiote it can't just be a suit you toss in, it's got to be a thing, right? And then it wasn't until really I saw that where I was like, oh, well, of course, Green Goblin. And I mean, throughout the history of Spider-Man, you can do a million different, that's, this, blah, blah. But Green Goblin's always been the guy, right? And like, here we are, I'm like, giving him his justice.
I will tell you that character has been talked about at the start of every game.
Okay.
Thinking about the future, not saying anything.
Of course.
This will be the thing that I guarantee. If Spider-Man 1 and Miles were our Iron Man, and this was kind of our Spider-Man 2 was like our Civil War. And it's time for the end game.
I got so many chills right there, baby. Come on.
So I got a couple of questions.
But that's the thing we can pass around for next whatever. So we'll see.
That would be the thing we pass around, yeah.
The Spider
I'm stoked for your Eternals. When's that?
God, man, Jesus.
Where's your Loki? The Spider Bots and all the Spider-Verse teas and stuff. One hella cool. Like by the time I got the last one, and you peer into like the portal, and it's like what is going on?
Portal.
Yeah, and it's the portal. Like really cool.
I was playing remote play next to Jen while she was watching Grey's Anatomy. By the way, I need a PlayStation Portal sooner rather than later.
I ordered one of those. I can't wait for that.
Wait, dude.
Is it? I've never tried it.
I did it once in test conditions. It was awesome. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm
I can't
excited to
wait.
get it.
I'm so pumped for that.
Anyways, though, when it opened, I paused it and I was like, Jen, you got to see this. And I turned up the volume, made her watch the entire thing, and then she's like, I still haven't seen Spider-Verse, so this isn't as cool. And I'm like, but yeah, they did the damn thing. They did the thing. And then I Googled, and it's Delilah, who wasn't in the movie, who got cut from the movie that Chris could design. And I'm like, and I wanted to text Chris, but I didn't text Chris. I don't want to root for Chris.
Yeah. So we've been very fortunate over the years to have a relationship with the Spider-Verse team. And obviously it started on Spider-Man 1 with the suits, and then in Miles, it took a whole nother level with the suits plus the animation style.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out how we could continue to build upon that relationship. So I met with the directors multiple times over the years, and we're trying to figure out how we could, what would be how could we go beyond suits, right? And we're like, and I mentioned like we have this spider bot thing, and like this. I was like, I think I understand everybody wants everything to be like these big missions and stories, but sometimes you just need stuff to like go find and have fun. We were in our head. I was like, what's the next backpack?
Yep.
What's the next backpack we can do? And we were like, well, we love these spider bots, and like we had them, and then the team just started making like crazy ones, and we're like, hey, could we somehow connect that? And we presented the idea to the Spider-Verse directors, and they were like, oh, hey, we have this character that we didn't end up using, and we kind of just pitched them the idea, and they were like, go for it. So yeah.
So what do you see this as? Do you see this as that was just a fun nod and it just connects to those movies? Or do you see this as, hey, this could potentially be part of gameplay in the future?
Truthfully, I don't know yet. I think that one thing I think that we talked about the MCU, the Spider-Verse, us. I think the one thing is what's really, in my opinion, is like, they're all done at a really high quality, and it shows how much people love Spider-Man. And if you the spider heroes, and if you do it right, people will enjoy it and want more of it. I don't, and we kind of all do our kind of own thing. I don't know if we just I don't know if it's all about just like, oh, now everything's multiverse, right? I don't know, like, hey, Spider-Verse, those films are just like, I mean, I know they're ridiculous, right? So, but now would we just do the same thing? And like, is there maybe we do a bigger connection? I don't know. I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tomorrow night. So like, I can't even think about anything right now. So if opportunity presents itself, maybe. If it doesn't, hey, it was a great moment in this game. So we'll see where it goes. I can tell you that I have not thought about 9 years ago or whatever we started this thing. Yeah. We'll figure that's the thing. It's like, maybe if I was so rigid, we wouldn't have done like, oh, we can't do this. But I'm like, I guarantee you guys had more fun doing that Spider-Bot thing with that big reveal at the end.
Oh yeah,
right?
Dude,
Exactly.
that was the thing of them being collectibles, and then I don't know, the third or fourth one where it was finally like, wait, I got a Spider-Gwen one. Like he doesn't know who that is, and then when Genki's like, it's coming from, I was like, drop everything.
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Oh,
this.
good.
I'm chasing
That's
this.
awesome.
I need to know what
That's
this is.
No,
great.
honestly, I want to give a major shout out to, I feel like all the little side quests, whether it's the Flame or the Mysterio stuff or the Spider Bots, where I think that after you get a couple of them, you getting little like radio chatter calls that like give you some context. It really incentivized the story-based stuff, like you're talking about. Story has to be everywhere, like that. It made it feel like, oh, these collectibles are worth getting, and there weren't too many of each one of them.
Yeah, and the other thing was like the writers having to write dialogue for both Miles and Peter.
Which is such a cool thing.
So like it's like double the work, and and could be more sooner. It's a ton of work, but I think that just having that little, when Genki chimes in with a little more information, you're like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? So yeah, it's great.
Staying on portals for a second. This is going off of the Spider-Bot thing. I feel like one moment that I haven't talked to anybody about that completely blew my mind, and I didn't know how it was happening, and I was just thrilled, was the Black Cat fight.
Yep.
Yeah. I was waiting for you guys to bring that up.
Zipping around through the portals, like that is the
Even
power of
before
this.
that,
By the way, where do you think we got that idea from? Portals and that was Ratchet.
Oh,
I was like,
we all have answered that.
I was like,
I was going to say the Spider-Man comic about magic.
I was like, that's
Does magic exist?
That's Ratchet. I mean, like we saw what they were doing. We're like, we have to take advantage of this.
Dude,
like,
the shot in like Antarctica or wherever the hell it was.
yeah.
It's like, dude, it was incredible. It was so thrilling, and it reminded me of any of the best set pieces of like the Uncharted 2 train sequence. Like the way that I felt playing that stuff, it's like I felt that.
And it was the build up to it of like this. Okay, wait, she's activated. Wait, they're over there. And as I was like swinging to it, and I'm like, am I about to go into the sanctum? Or what? And then when I didn't, but it was, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. We at one point talked about the sanctum going inside of it. It's just we were like, we want this chase. We want.
Did you ever talk about Doc or Doctor Strange?
A little bit, but I think we were more intrigued for this one to. I wanted the Miles Black Cat back and forth. I thought that was because like we're like, well, if it's Peter, and I'm like, we've seen Peter and Felicia together. Like we've seen them. Like how fun would it be to see her giving shit to Miles? Like that's like, it's like I love when they're fighting, and Erica has this great line where she's like, you really are like he's really like being like the really nice Spider-Man, and she goes, you really are a Spider-Man. It's like it's great, and it's just she's a great Black Cat. I mean, it's just awesome. Like, I mean, she steals every scene she's in. And but that was a fun. That was like that's when you're like, all right, this is really Marvel. Like we got portals going on, we got chasing Black Cat, and it's just, and then like her jumping through the portals to do takedowns and stuff like that. It was it's really fun.
Real quick, while we're talking about these Easter eggs, and if I'm happy to see Strange, and I didn't see Strange, but you get the Wong note. And I was like, that's pretty dope. Yeah. Was there any? Did you kick around an Easter egg idea for Avengers? Because again, the tower's there, but there wasn't they're on the West Coast this time.
Yeah. we actually really didn't. It's because so you asked me about expectations and all that stuff. That's the thing I worry about more is like, can you tease people and then they get really pissed if you don't execute on it? Like, so like if I do,
Symbiotes are taking over the whole world, but the Avengers aren't helping.
exactly that kind. So where's that balance too? Because I mean, it is at some point there's like licenses, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
things like that. So like we try to find. By the way, you saw that. Did any of you guys go to the Wakandan embassy with Miles?
I haven't yet. No.
Oh well, maybe you should. Small little Easter egg. That's all I'll say.
Awesome. That's so sick.
Just say there's a small little Easter egg.
These Easter
but you
eggs.
got to be Miles. You got to be Miles.
We got a little Miles Wakanda action here. We got the Baxter building. I'm surprised at the seeming lack of Wolverine in this game.
Oh, that guy.
You know what I mean? What are there things that I potentially missed there, or was there a decision to not do it?
There was a decision not to do it. I think that, I think I try to thinking about trying to make Spider-Man while also there's another, like I'm just trying to learn how to make Spider-Man or try to get Spider-Man off the ground while there's another Marvel thing I'm trying to get. I think for us, it's like, hey, let's let that team cook, let them cook.
Get out of their way.
And you let them make the game they want to make. And, who knows what the future holds, but right now let's let them do their thing. And that game's going to be great.
This will sound like fishing, but I really just honestly don't remember. Has it been confirmed, denied, or just not mentioned if they're in the same universe?
I mean, they are, it's both, they're all 1048.
Okay.
And 48.
Game.
I think I got that right, but yeah.
Cool. Same
It's sometimes why it's funny how I'm sitting there doing these things live. I'm like, okay, who is this? What did I say? I'm like, please sound like you know what you're talking about, Brian.
Speaking of Wolverine, like, have you guys? And obviously, you might not be even to be able to say much about this, but have you guys
I'm sure Sony PR is loving this conversation now. But go.
Have you thought beyond much about what's beyond Spider-Man for you guys? Like, obviously, Wolverine's coming through,
Yes.
but when we talk about Insomniac, oftentimes we're talking about how insane it is that Insomniac has had so many games for the PS5 already. Right, like there's been Remastered, there's been Miles Morales, there's been Rift Apart. Now there's Spider-Man 2.
God, all these
Wolverine.
games sounds like an S-tier studio to me.
Quick, you just took my fucking joke.
There's we're approaching with Wolverine probably the 5th PS5 game. Like for you guys, have you thought about what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I think we that's, I would say that's when you have a leader like Ted Price, who not only thinks about how us making games, but making sure that the company is taken care of 100%. I mean, there's nobody I respect more or trust than Ted. So I think that we're always looking for, I can't say or anything, but like, yeah, I mean, as a studio who's always making sure that there's a plan in place that we're taking care of everybody. Of course there's plans in place, but yeah, I mean, we make a lot of games. I mean, guess what? First of all, these games are really hard to make but like the part of the thing is, we want people to play them. So like that's the motivation is let's get them out there. Right. And I think the reason why we are able to make games, I think is that we're always looking at our process. We're always looking at production process and we are not perfect at all. Like, and I am by far not close to a perfect creative director, but we're honest with ourselves going, hey, can we learn from Spider-Man 1 to Miles to Ratchet and now apply to Spider-Man 2? And then what are we going to be able to apply to, Spider-Man 2 to our future titles? So I think that think is what helps us get there. It's not the anything, but I think that's part of the thing. But yeah, in terms of like, I think Ted is such a great leader. He's thinking 3-5 steps ahead. And then obviously working, now being with PlayStation, they're, I'm sure they're thinking about it, but I'm probably talking about things that are way above what I would ever be responsible for. But
Jen's fine with that.
Yeah, I know. But I think that I will tell you, as someone who has worked at the studio now for 15 years, never having to really worry about that extra stuff that I know is reality for a lot of people, whether in gaming or not, I don't take it for granted ever. And that's why I think someone like me and the team and the people at the studio work so hard, because we know how lucky and fortunate we are. There you go.
I want to take a hard turn now, going back to the story of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Something that I really loved about Spider-Man 2 is we talked about the side quests so much, and I really do think that the core of this game is the side quests and the stories there. But overall, whether it's the side stuff or the main quest, I loved the focus on rehabilitation as a theme that kind of was between both. I feel like everything that Miles had to deal with of going up against Martin, but then also dealing with Peter and his story with Harry, and like dealing with like what that could all look like. Somebody that is dying, you know, and like how can we bring them back? But then also applying the concept of a sickness and then helping somebody, but then also a concept of these villains, so many different villains that are trying to get better in very different ways. Like the moment where Tombstone shows up and he's just like working at Coney Island, like so many things are not said and so many things are explicitly said, but I just feel like that kind of being like the core, and especially the end scenes with Martin and Miles just being so damn impactful.
You know, something that I'm glad. Thank you for that. It's a really big compliment, and I think that the thing that we've talked about since day one is, you know, obviously we want to deliver. You know, you look at the statue, right? You know, all 19 inches.
All
of it.
19 inches. Of Venom.
Now I say that I'm trying to say something like really nice. I hope. We want to deliver that superhero fantasy. We want that, you know, Pete and Miles versus Venom, and you know sprouting wings and going crazy and all that stuff, right? But for us, it's as important to deliver those relatable human stories. And like, because I feel, and you probably feel the same way, is like, you don't care about the stuff in the suit unless you care about the stuff outside the suit. And I think like that helps drive that stuff. And our goal is to just make stories that, like, I will always say Black Panther, I think, is my favorite MCU movie, because I think you could remove every single superhero thing from that movie and it's still a great story. Like, I think you could remove all that, just, you know, and I think that's what we look for. What are those, you know, and finding those things that are relatable that you can connect to. Like, I'm sure at some point, whether you did it or not, you asked yourself when you're a senior in high school, what am I going to do next? I'm sure some people are like, well, I'm going to apply to college. And that's probably going to require you to write an essay. And you've sat there going, what the hell do I write about?
How do I sum myself up?
Yeah, right? That's something you can identify. I am sure there are people who have lost somebody in their lives and going, how can I move forward?
Yeah.
Like Pete does, right? Or does something, maybe not someone kills your father or responsible for your father's death, but someone did something terrible to you, and how do you maybe not forgive them, but move on? Like, though, to me, those are relatable things. And also, like, even look at Harry. Harry's motivation is, it's intrinsically good. He wants to heal the world. He just does it in a really effed up way, right? He's going about it, but that's for us, that's what we try to do. And that was one of the reasons we chose Harry for Venom, was like, we felt like the story that the direction we were going, him being close. And then something I thought a lot about is Pete with the symbiote. You know, I know in my life when I can think back when things have happened in my family where it's not directed toward me, but someone else is suffering, I almost take on a different, like, I almost lose myself in that process. And I kind of forget, like, oh no, it's this other person who's in trouble. And Pete, when he's in the black suit, kind of loses himself after a while. He kind of loses what his purpose was to get this thing off him, and he like loses himself to the addiction of the symbiote, right? It's all these, like, I call relatable, believable motivations that we want to inject, and that's how we approach our story. Like, we spend way more time on that stuff than we do on what villain is going to happen here at this spot. Like, because I feel like that's when whether you read your favorite comic or seen your favorite movie, like, that's the stuff we remember in those movies. Like, to me, Black Panther will always be about when T'Challa goes to the ancestral plane and talks to his dad for the first time. Like, that to me is probably my favorite Marvel scene ever.
Yeah. Personally, to me, the S tier conversation, I feel, was earned in this game. And it was through moments like the high school flashback where I'm experiencing it, and I'm like, everything that I loved so much about Last of Us Left Behind, of Riley and Ellie in the mall, just walking around. And it is the gameplay, that's the fun surprise gameplay moments that'll pop up that are you're Spider-Man, but you're also not supposed to be at this moment.
Yeah.
But also combined with the kind of like you're walking around getting like the lore of everything, and it's like you don't need to check every single interactable thing, but you want to because you want to hear the conversations. Like that to me, I feel like is the turning point in this game. It's pretty early on where I was like, oh dang, like the story here, like they're going way deeper into this stuff.
Yeah, I always say you don't have to go really far to find things that can influence you, because the PlayStation family makes so many good games and does so many things right that you just go, well, load up Last of Us 2. And when they go to the dinosaur museum? Like or load up Ragnarok and check this out. Like, I mean, the scene you referenced to the beginning with the wolf.
Yeah, Fenrir.
I mean, I don't even. I couldn't even. I was like, if I don't, I have a cat and I have a dog, and I'm like, oh my god, I'd be losing it. You don't have to go very far to get influenced, and I think you hopefully see some of that in our games, and then we bring but we put our Insomniac spin on it.
Talk to me about the influence on Mary Jane missions.
Oh, wait, here we go. I've been waiting.
PS1, right? That was such a big hang up for so many people.
It was.
You dropped it here, but immediately, like, don't worry, you got a stun gun.
It's the MJ missions. Where do I begin? I heard all the feedback. We heard all the feedback.
Of course you did.
And I will tell you, I felt like it was a cop-out if we didn't have them.
Yeah.
I felt like we were saying, okay, yep, everybody just wants to see Spider-Man and whatever. Like, who cares about the perspective of seeing the world from a non-superhero standpoint? I was like, whatever. And I said, no, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna look at the criticisms and see what we can do right. And I think that it was really important to show that she is a capable hero in her own way.
For sure.
And I feel like we leveled this up, and I'm really proud of the team. Like that mission where Pete's sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Like that, I just remember saying, the goal here, I told the team, I go, just make people feel like she's really capable and she's going to help save Pete. And they just took that and ran with it and went crazy with it. Like Lindsay, Ben, Neil, like so many people worked on that. So, that's like three of many people that worked on that mission. And to the point where we even put her playable at the beginning of the last mission. And I think that I just didn't want to take the easy way out, because I think we could have not had her playable and people would have been like, okay, that's fine, they got it. But I thought again, the whole 360 experience of the universe, I felt like it was really important to prove that we could make them better. What some people might not like them, I understand that. But also the other thing is, like, she's supposed to be a change of pace. She's supposed to be for 10, 15 minutes, just like everything can't be at a 10. Everything can't be at a 10. Finding those moments where we can slow things down or show a different perspective, that's called pacing. You know, like I do believe that. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying like everything's perfect, but I do think that's important in our games.
I mean, in a way, right? That's how you get to the anti-Venom moment, right?
Yeah.
What you're talking about, where you had those missions where you didn't have it. I swooped in and tried to do a symbiote nest, right? And it was like, fuck, why this giant shows up and I can't even fucking fight him?
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so to get that and have that be that turnkey and then have it ramp back up,
Yeah.
was an interesting one.
Yeah. I did like making MJ scream, though. That was pretty cool.
Very cool. There's so many.
She originally wasn't supposed to be Scream.
Oh yeah.
She originally wasn't. We have a piece of concept art where they're fighting. She's just kind of more like a black and white, and they were like, "Well, she has red hair.
She has the hair. Let's go."
Why aren't we doing Scream? Like, let's just do it. And that was it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
There were so many moments like that
I hope I feel like I'm bragging. I'm probably
No,
not.
you're
Okay,
not
okay,
bragging.
okay,
You
okay.
should be bragging.
Oh, yeah, also you deserve
That-
to brag.
that's the thing for me.
Okay, I don't want to come across like, listen, like I said, like if I say the word I, just say it's we, because it's a whole team that does this.
We are Venom.
Exactly.
What we heard.
I'm bonded with the whole team.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed about Spider-Man 2 in particular is that anytime I was like, oh, they're teasing something, the result was going to be the thing that I expected or something even cooler. And I feel like every single time that was the case. And I think the Mysterio stuff was a good example of that, of like, I was like, this better culminate in a super cool fight. The snow globe fight, come on.
Yeah.
Such a great
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
But more than that, the introduction to the Mysterio stuff, it's like Miles' dream, and he's this dope DJ.
Yeah.
Like that gameplay sequence, I'm like, this is so creative and such a good use of Mysterio as a character, and like applying that to a video game, like it was just very, very
Awesome.
cool.
That's great. That was well, the thing is, I remember we started working on the game, and I think it was a Far From Home. Like, I was like, oh man, like their Mysterio, like, oh crap, like we got to compete with this, like that one hallucination sequence from the movie. I'm like, oh my god! And then someone had the idea of the snow globe. I'm like, oh, that's super cool. We could fight in the snow globe. I'm like, that's awesome. So yeah, I'm glad it resonated because that's such a great character. You can do so many cool things, and the team from the DJ mini game all the way through the challenges to the final boss fight, I'm really happy with it. And that's like, and again, like that's an example of maybe in Spider-Man 1, you would have just done the challenges and it would have been like, whatever, but you get that like little piece of you're saving people, and then it culminates with this, go back to the Mysterium and have this big boss fight. I don't know if we would have done that in the first game. So hopefully it shows that we learn from our previous games. I
think that's shown in spades, right? That's what I've always said. Why I think Miles was a better game than 1, and now I think 2 is better than Miles, right? It's because I think you learn these lessons.
And it should be. And we should. I mean, by all intents and purposes, they should be getting better. We should be learning. We should be getting better at making Spider-Man experiences. And now I understand that the expectations get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know what the expectations someone has in their head, but God damn, it better be better than the last game. And like Miles should be better than Spider-Man. And Spider-Man 2 should be better than Miles, I hope. Now, we all have favorite moments. We all have favorite stories that like, I might like this Miles story better than the Spider-Man 1 or vice versa. But I do hope that people see an evolution and see that we are getting better and addressing things. Like, for example, like boss fights was a huge focus for us. A big focus of like, how can we make them more challenging? How can we like, Phase 1 is this, but Phase 2 takes you somewhere else and does this, and take advantage of the PS5 and like, start in the sewer, then go to chase, and then go up a building and then back down and have it be all seamless. That was a big goal for us too.
That is one thing I appreciated about this game were the boss fights, right?
Oh,
like
good.
How the phases felt like that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to like playing all the Souls games that me and Andy been playing, right? It's like the phase changes and how you make the first half of the boss fight feel different from the second half.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of the transitions.
Oh,
here.
thank you. That was a big focus. We had a boss team that said like, you always, when we started this game, and we probably start any sequel, you're like, okay, here are the things, don't fuck up. Like, don't break it. Like, don't screw up traversal. Like, it's really good. Just add a couple things that people really will like. And then where are those areas we want to improve? Like, okay, let's inject more story and a sense of greater exploration, discovery in the open world and the side content. Boss fights. How can we levels up in a sense of challenge? And like, I mean, by the way, Elden Ring is my second favorite game of all time. I will tell you. By the way, I'm terrible at all those games. I'm terrible. But Elden Ring, I could grind until I was strong enough to be good at them. And that world is just
incredible.
Oh my God! Holy cow! What an experience. God,
is that why you added a parry?
No, it wasn't. Good win though. But I think it was, and I knew like we're not making Elden Ring level difficulty here or From Software level difficulty, but we wanted that even like in a Zelda, like, hey, phase 1, this happens, you got master, and now we're gonna mix things up, and we wanted that across like. There's a reason why Venom sprouts his wings for when you fight Miles. Now it's his ground stuff. Now you're going to see him in the air, right? And we took that philosophy across a lot of the.
The lizard fight. I love phase 1, phase 2. Phase 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like it just kept going. And like by the end of it, when you're running up that building, I'm like, this is insane, man.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here, which makes me very sad because I feel like we could talk about this forever.
We
you
are.
Guys have any?
You got to eat before you go to. And when you go to the other spoiler cast, don't do them as good.
Okay.
Do you guys have any final things you want to say, or Brian, do you have anything you really want to get out?
No, I'll let you guys. I feel like I should keep talking. So
I have a last question.
Yeah.
How do you guys balance what you choose to show beforehand? Because one of the things that surprised me as I was playing was when I finally got to the PlayStation Showcase demo, right, where it was you as Symbiote Peter and the reveal of Symbiote Peter that we got at PlayStation Showcase and doing all the stuff on the water. And when I was playing it, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm also surprised by how late in the game this is happening compared to like it being our first glimpse of gameplay in that PlayStation Showcase. Was that a conversation and decision that you're a part of, and how do you guys get down to doing that?
So I will tell you, on this game, I actually didn't want to show anything. Like I drove PR app, everybody crazy. I'm like, I didn't even want to do a preview tour for the game. Like, I wanted to show nothing. I was like, blame him. But actually blame him, because I would quote Greg going, Greg is just going to say, like, we saw everything before the game. There's no surprises, blah, 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 whatever. Like, he's going to do his thing, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But I would have no shirt on.
Yeah, exactly. Just take his photos.
I think, but it was like, the real answer is like, okay, outside of like, that's not going to happen, Brian, you have to actually show parts of the game. What's a 7 to 12 minute sequence that we can show that kind of highlights some like, so you guys have things to talk about for an hour. Like, we saw this and we saw that, we saw this, and then you have to speculate on things. I think that's, I mean, I'm not giving any trade secrets away. That's what you're doing. You want to get people excited about what's new, what's different. So like, we're going to show the black suit. We're going to show the symbiote abilities. We're going to show the parry. We're going to show new finishers. We're going to show a hero switch. We're going to show the slingshot. We're going to show the wingsuit. We're going to show the wind tunnels. We're going to show the web line. We're going to show new gadgets. You know, I'm going through the demo in my head, right? And it's like, what are all those new things that we can show that get people excited and anticipate? But I think I hope people feel like we showed less this time than we did on Spider-Man 1. Like, you know, it was a shorter campaign, but in terms of like when we started finally talking about the game, but it's just enough to get people excited, show, hey, there's new stuff, and then get you guys talking.
I have two things. One, I want to pin you down. Two, just to thank you. So the first one though is like, and this is doubling back. I wanted to do it earlier, but the conversation kind of moved, right?
Did I screw it up?
No, you did great.
Okay.
You talk about setting expectations, right? And all these different things. We talked a little bit about DLC, but then we also talked about Miles Morales, right, being standalone. Should people expect DLC for this game, or is this like, this is Spider-Man 2, and obviously, like you mentioned, New Game Plus, yada yada yada, but like, or is it like, how do you look at the future of Spider-Man 2?
Nothing to talk about today.
Okay.
That's that kind of my
Totally
answer.
fair. Yeah, no, I appreciate
I mean, I think right now the focus is let's get that New Game Plus out right now. That's step one right now. Okay. I think, and honestly, I think that's all I can.
Totally fair.
That's all I can think about.
Thank you for being honest and answering when you can and when you can. And then my other comment, of course, is just to thank you for Shirtless Spider-Man and Shirtless Miles Morales.
Oh yeah.
Like, not even as a joke. We haven't talked about that. It was one of those, like, you know, a touchstone I will never forget, playing Spider-Man 1 2018 in the apartment. It's Jen's already in bed. I'm sitting there in the dark playing, and I was like, I'm getting ready to go to bed. And then finally, it's a Halloween party, and I knew that's where it was. And I was like, and playing through and getting to it and capturing it and like trying to process it and going to bed and thinking about it. And so, you know, months ago, years ago now, when we did get hit up and they're like, hey, you got to sign this thing, and I'm like, do I have to sign a release for a character that is your character? Like, I don't know.
When I saw Shirtless Peter and Shirtless Miles, I was like, oh, that's going in. That's like because it's part of the, like, you know, those photos you can take of New York. Yeah. And I said, you guys can do whatever you want. These guys have to be in here. They have to be in the game.
And it was the thing of then, so we knew for a long time ago, we're in the game, cool. And like I was wondering how it's gonna be. And even then, as soon as you did the preview thing, the IGN mentioned it, Tim texted, like it was like immediately the klaxon was rung. And so I was like, okay, cool. But to get to it in the game, hang out with it, then go into the menu and see it called Kinda Fanboys. And like it was like you guys went above and beyond. And I really we can't, you know, repay you enough for that, right?
Well, you're very welcome.
This goes back, I think, straight to 2015 in my Game Awards speech of like, I think of how fucked up it is that we have a internet level of celebrity, right? And every day get to have fans and people tell us we're awesome and great and yada yada yada. But then people make video games and they, you know, are underground for 5 years working on something and don't necessarily get the positive feedback and don't know the whole thing and da da da. And like, for you guys to still see us as being important enough to be in the game and be cool, like that's insane.
Well, I think we all have a bond that we love these kind of games. We love superheroes, and you know, like, I mean, there's so much shitty things happening in the world. Let's have some fun. Let's smile a little bit. You know, like let's celebrate. Let's celebrate being good people and being part of this. We're all in this amazing industry together, right? Like, you know, I make video games. You guys talk about them. Like, we're all in the same industry. We're all essentially a family, right? Like in one way, I mean, I'm sure we're a big dysfunctional family, but hey, it's a family, right? And I think that I I've been part of this industry since the day I mean, even before I was writing about games, I worked at GameStop. You know, I worked at GameStop. It was called Software Etc. back then.
Yeah,
Holy
yeah.
crap. It's such a great industry with such amazing people. We should celebrate that and support each other and be positive. And I think you guys represent that. And I hope Insomniac represent that, and PlayStation, and the fact that we can come together and have fun like this and joke around. And I'm really proud to be part of it. And we're so happy to have you guys in some way represented in the game. I wish we could do more of that.
I mean,
You're free to do a spin-off.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
I'm
No.
available.
right.
real quick,
Not
jumping
expecting
off
it.
this, I want to say, like, I love obviously that moment was incredible seeing it, but I think it was such a great call in the game to not have it just be like iconic locations in New York this time, but instead have it be like community-based moments and like more like fun.
And that's one of our writers, Akshay, kind of really took the lead on that and said like, hey, we're gonna like. New Yorkers as people. It's
So
like
good.
I was just there this weekend. And it's like that place is like really, you got to be there to like really understand like that place is really freaking special. It's more than just like seeing that skyscraper here, seeing that it's the culture that is there. And I hope we in some way did that well.
I definitely think you did. And I also love it. And this is for people out there. We said something like this earlier in the show, but like you can go into the menus and for the kind of fanboys thing, like you can hear, if you're playing as Miles, you hear Miles talk about it. If you switch out as Peter, he has different things to say. So there's a lot of fun lore stuff, whether it's the kind of fanboy joke or just all the other things that like super fun to listen to, the takes from both of the Spider-Man there. But I just real quick want to say, when we did I didn't want spoilers to talk about it when we did our preview. But now that we're here in the spoiler cast, we did the Spider-Man 2 preview. I was down there. There was maybe like 100 people in this room. Paris and Danny Pena and Andrea were all around me playing. We all have our own headsets on. And we're just playing. And I was about to finish the demo. And I was like, oh, I saw a little photo op. I was like, I'm going to do that. I want to extend this time as much as possible. And I swing over and I see these guys. And I literally threw my headphone off and like lost my shit. I was like, oh my God, to the point that like the security people like looked at me and like Danny and all them looked like, what's going on? I was like, stop what you're doing. Come look at this. Like it was such a fun freak out moment where like I know that years ago that they got reached out to of like, hey, maybe like sign off your likeness or whatever. But like, we don't know what that's actually going to look like.
Yeah.
For it to be a like main thing to do in the game was like incredible.
For it to be it's canon, the real life photo, right? Because the real life photo is on the roof of the old studio, so it's like that is what's happening in the thing. It's bizarre.
So cool. But again,
I'm
let's close this out. Go for it.
I'm glad it made you guys happy. I think end of the day, like sometimes I'm like, games are just to make people smile and have fun, and if that contributed to you guys,
if my Twitter feed is in text messages or any indication, they are doing it because it's so hard not to talk about it. Right?
Oh yeah,
Time
I'm
warp.
like waiting to like tweet about it.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
That's awesome.
Roger's working on a pretty amazing TikTok of us
That's
talking
great.
about it.
Yeah.
And thank you for your guys' support. I mean, there's a lot of games to talk about, and I appreciate it. And I know we gave each other a lot of crap sometimes, and about things, but like I know it comes from a really good place because you guys want the game to be good, and we want to deliver a great game. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Well, congratulations to you. Congratulations to the team that might be listening to this. And hey, all the gamers out there,
Congratulations to you.
congratulations to you.
Living in
getting
the
to play
best
this.
year ever of video games.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Brian, thank you so much for hanging out with
you.
us. We'll see you in a couple years.
5 years.
We'll see.
See you guys.